I'm here with Rupert Allen, Director of Marketing, Toca Football,
Yes,
Costa Mesa, California.
that's right.
Rupert is a career ally with the Albert Baker Fund's Career Alliance.
Yep.
But prior to that, Rupert was a job seeker.
I was.
So Rupert, tell us a little bit about the challenges you faced while you were a job seeker prior to landing this most recent job.
Sure, yeah. So I, about a year ago, a little bit give or take, I was in sort of a period, I had started my own company that, I was closing down, and, I was in this period of determining where do I go next? What's my next job? What's the meaning of life? All those
Sure.
heavy questions. And so I sort of entered this phase of searching and wrestling, with those questions and those ideas. And in that process, I had a lot of great interim work, which is something that I'm really grateful for looking back, especially.
So kind of short-term
Short
jobs.
term, and I really just listened, and for those of you who are listening from a Christian Science perspective, I really was praying throughout the whole process. But for anyone who's not from a Christian Science perspective, I was just really trying to just stay in touch with what I felt was right to do. And so I, in that process, I was led to be, a substitute teacher at a private school, which is a phenomenal experience, great way to give back. I did some tutoring, and I did some other scattered work. But then it sort of came to me clearly, I kept re-hitting the same wall where I would just overanalyze my decisions and over-process, think about, is this the exact job I want, or is this the exact path I want? And the answer would always come back as a no, because I would inevitably, nothing would look perfect on paper.
Got it.
And so it came to me clearly that I needed to just start reaching out to people, start talking to people, just with the intention of finding out what they do, what they're all about. Did they ever go through a process like this in their life? Which it turns out, when I did finally have informational interviews, everybody has this.
So had you done very many prior to kind of really hitting that wall? Was that something that was kind of in your world?
I didn't do too many.
Were you comfortable networking, or?
I'm naturally outgoing, but I think networking itself, even for outgoing people, is like this alien process.
And it's kind of scary for a lot of people,
yeah,
too.
For sure.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where you were?
Yeah, it's a little bit like, and it's like, is it really going to lead to something? Is it worth my time? There's all these excuses.
To say the right thing.
Yeah, is it? And so I kind of just got over that stuff because I had to.
Kind of hungry.
Yeah. You reach the point where you're like, all right, I'm sick and tired of waking up in the morning and not really having anything to do that I really like, or even at all.
Yep.
And so I just said, all right, I'm over it. And I remembered about 3 years prior, I went to an Albert Baker Fund event that you hosted, and it was helpful. Just the energy itself, just going and doing the thing.
I remember meeting you there and having a conversation. Yep. So good.
So then it was like, all right, well, I remember this Albert Baker Fund portal, Career Alliance portal. So I logged on, and I just basically went through a list of all the people, and I just read, okay, does this sound 70% interesting to me?
So you were intentional, right?
Yes.
So you were looking for anyone that might resonate with you.
Exactly.
You didn't really say, I'm going to go do this or this.
No.
You just kind of went through and said, who's in there?
Exactly. And so I really tried to approach it from a discovery perspective.
Yeah, because I remember looking, man, there's information requests coming in, flying in from Rupert. I'm thinking, Rupert, where are you going with this, right?
Yeah, what's happening, And so, and I think that came as a result of all that wasted time of trying to figure out humanly what's the exact thing that's perfect for me, and that's just not a good approach. I figured out it's better to go do the thing, if you can.
Right.
So you're like, I want to be, and actually I will say that in this period I was exploring acting, I was exploring writing, I was trying to do some things, and through the doing, you get some interesting experience, or I got some interesting experience, and then I figured out maybe this isn't the right thing, but that's better than if I were to have sat there and done nothing,
Right.
and
Right.
then you have nothing to say for yourself. So anyways, I hit up about, I'd say 10 to 15 people in different industries, different career backgrounds.
All through the career line.
All through the career lines, as well as some people outside.
Right.
And I had tons of great conversations. Some people were just about my, just a little bit older than me. Some people were retired but had a tremendous experience. And I really think that the approach for me, of going in and not having too heavy of expectations about, is this person going to get me a job? And I think that's also part of the hesitation for people. It's like, well, if I don't feel that this person is the exact person that's going to be in the exact career that I'm going to want, why am I wasting my time with this?
And what did you find when you were, tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
what you learned from that.
Sure. So what I learned from it is for the people that were Christian Scientists, I got tremendous spiritual advice, which helped me in just staying positive and optimistic and focused on the truth. And then from a business perspective, I learned about what I didn't want to do, right? And also, I actually met someone who we hit it off really well. She was a wonderful businesswoman, great career, partially retired, still runs her own businesses though. And we just hit it off well. And she said, well, the first call was over the phone. And she said, well, when I get back from traveling, let's meet up. So we met up, continued to have a great conversation. Again, didn't have any heavy expectations. And then we got to talking about, well, what are your interests, and et cetera, et cetera. And she said, oh, well, I actually know someone who runs, a company that's in the soccer industry. Do you know about this company? And I said, no, I don't know about this company. Sounds great. I'd love it if you could just make an introduction. Again, I don't know where it will lead, but let's see. That turned out to be the guy who ran the company. He forwarded my resume to the chief marketing officer, who said, I like your resume. He said, this guy's resume looks interesting. Let's bring him in for an interview. I went through the interview process, and I got the job. So it sounds simple in hindsight always. Oh, you just meet one person, and there was a lot of searching that went into making these decisions, but looking back on it now, I realize how important it is to just expedite that process. Don't waste time. I'm telling myself in the future, if I'm ever in that situation again, I'm gonna try to make sure that I don't waste my time, my energy, fretting, wondering too much. Spend that energy meeting people, having informational interviews, being less, try not to outline everything so exactly, but instead just do things that put yourself out there. And so that's the best advice I could give myself in the future, and to anyone who might be in that situation now, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing to let people know, what you learned. What are a few things that you picked up out of those informational interviews as you started from one and you started through the process? Are there things that you learned? Did you get more comfortable? Did you get good feedback about your resume or specific things that helped you?
Yeah, well, I think I'm personally pretty comfortable in most interview situations. I think once I overcame the resistance inside myself of just doing it, because I guess if I could put it another way, when I actually showed up to the interviews, the people that I showed up for, they were so receptive because you're just asking them about them and their path and how they got there, and it's sort of, in some sense, you're honoring their progress. At least that's what I tried to do. And so I might not have approached it as with any specific thing in mind, but I definitely, before I even went into it, I tried to make sure that I was prepared well. I tried to get advice on my resume, but there was actually even one instance that in an interview, not through Albert Baker Fund, the person began commenting on my resume and saying, oh, maybe you might want to do this, and you might want to, change this up a little bit. And it turned out that advice, actually, I chose to not go with. And that advice, so I guess what I'm saying here is that if you believe in God, God will guide you through these interviews. And it's okay to stay true to what you feel is right. Is kind of what I learned. Some things felt better, some things didn't. And so I just felt, but if you don't have the data, if you're not doing the thing, you don't know what feels right.
What kind of things would you recommend a job seeker or a student do, to prepare for these interviews? You mentioned the word, I prepared for it, and so
Sure.
I was comfortable. Are there things that you would recommend they do prior to talking with someone?
Yes. In general, there's sort of the general things, and then there's the more specific things. The general things, I think, if you can identify areas that you are halfway or 70% of the way interested in, identify those things. Because you might be talking to an accountant, but he might actually know something about marketing. So if you're like, I really thought maybe marketing is the thing, sort of identify those things. There's actually something really interesting called Ikigai, which is Ikagai, which is a Japanese term, and it's a Venn diagram with 4 intersections, as opposed to just 2. And in the middle of that diagram, I'm not remembering exactly, but you can Google it. It's like what you're good at, what your skills are, what the economy needs, and what you love to do.
Good.
And the intersection of those things is Ikigai. And so it's sort of an interesting thought experiment about, well, what might my purpose be in the work world?
Right.
Do I really love doing this? Okay, but do I have skills in that? If not, maybe I need to learn some skills before I even start going down that road. So the general research, read articles, read about different things, be prepared. If you're gonna go talk to someone specific, try to read about them. Try to look at what have they done? What is their company? Do your research on them. Not in a way that you're trying to, kiss up to them or anything, but just really hey, I saw you've done this in your career. I was curious if you could tell me about that. And great, because they're a subject matter expert in themselves.
Right.
So if you want a topic to make people comfortable and to make yourself comfortable, do less talking and more question asking.
Now, did the allies ask you questions about yourself?
For sure.
And would you suggest maybe taking some time to be prepared and go through a few predetermined questions they might ask you about, so that you've got a little bit?
Actually, that does remind me. I read through a lot of the interview questions that you actually have prepared. I'm not remembering exactly what it's called.
Yeah, it's under
the informational interview.
Right, and
resources.
they get the tools. That's right, and they get the tools section. That's right.
I use that as a format.
Oh, good.
And now I will say I use it as a format. Answered that stuff mainly for myself, just to kind of get familiar with myself, which is kind of funny. But when I got into the interview, I sort of just let it happen naturally. And I think a lot of the time when I speak to some of my friends who are introverted and things, they tell me things like, well, I'm so worried about saying the right answer that I sort of seize up. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about having the answer ready in case you need it, but then just really focusing on the other person and how you might be able to contribute in the conversation. I guess just feeling natural about it. I don't know. It's
right, and that comes with preparation,
yes,
right? That
exactly.
allows you to do that,
yeah.
so that you can think on your feet, and you don't have to think about, how do I answer this question?
Yeah.
You've got some preparation in front of that. So, yeah, we've got great resources through our Life Launch course.
Yes.
There's modules on informational interviews and interviewing. So there's some really good things that one can take out of the information that we have to help them kind of get ready.
Yep.
Another question that I have, looking back and thinking about your college career and then the time before you landed this job, when would you recommend students start building their professional network and maybe start initiating informational interview requests and trying to build, trying to make those connections out in the professional world?
I mean, it's the classic answer, but the earlier the better. Now, if you're a freshman or a sophomore and it's just the last thing on your mind, fine. Definitely junior, senior year. I didn't even really do it. But if I'm going back in time, if I'm trying to accelerate my career trajectory, I would have been doing that. And what's interesting is that they're actually such a rewarding experience, because when I was looking in that time, it wasn't of interest to me because I thought, oh yeah, informational interviews, what is that even worth? You know, I'm trying to rule the world or find the perfect job. When actually that's a great way to find the perfect job and rule the world.
Right.
You know, it's like you're looking for the answers somewhere else because you don't want to listen to any good advice, but that's the good advice. And so and the other thing is that people are way more receptive to young people who are hungry. And luckily I did these informational interviews still at somewhat of a young age, but I don't even think that's a limitation. I think anyone who's willing to just sort of go humbly into the experience and just discover, just human to human, I think anyone will be receptive, but especially college students. Everyone remembers being a college student and having that question looming over their head, where am I going to go? What's my job going to be? So when you have a massive opportunity as a student to take advantage of that sympathy or whatever you want to call it, and leverage that.
What would you say to someone who is a professional like yourself now, and having the experience that you've had, would you recommend that they become a career ally and kind of pass that blessing forward to others?
For sure. I think it's by giving the qualities that you naturally express and being honest and being clear with people. And it doesn't have to even be, like I said, this woman that I met happened to know somebody and it worked out. But I also think that I shouldn't hesitate, and I don't think anyone should hesitate, to just be open sort of energetically or spiritually or morally or ethically or whatever, volunteering wise, to just helping. And often what I found in these interviews is that it wasn't even necessarily something exact that the person said that made me feel better about the fact that I was progressing forward, but just the fact that there was someone there to help me.
That really had that honest, sincere.
Like, I will help you.
You're right.
And you're just like, okay, I'm thinking back on the 10 interviews, I can remember some tidbits, but I really remember just the feeling in the room that these people were giving their time.